I never thought my own mother would betray me. Not after everything we'd been through together, not after I'd sacrificed so much for our family. But I guess that's the thing about betrayal. It always comes from the people you least expect. My name is Emma Carter, and until 6 months ago I thought I knew what family meant. I'm 32, working as a paralegal at Donovan & Associates in downtown Boston. It's not the glamorous life I once dreamed of, but it pays the bills and kept a roof over my head, and my mother's, after Dad died 3 years ago. The day everything changed was unremarkable at first. Tuesday, April 14th. I remember because it was tax day, and I'd just finished helping Mum with her returns the night before. I was exhausted, having stayed up until nearly 2 a.m. sorting through her disorganised records. That's the kind of daughter I was, always reliable, always there. The morning air had that perfect spring crispness as I walked into the office building. Coffee in hand, hair still damp from my rushed shower. My phone buzzed with a text from my younger sister, Lily. "Hey sis, can you meet for lunch? Need to talk. Important." Lily and I had a complicated relationship. She was 26, carefree, and had somehow managed to avoid most of the responsibility that had fallen on my shoulders after Dad's death. While I worked 60-hour weeks and checked on Mum daily, Lily flitted between jobs, apartments, and boyfriends. Dad had always had a soft spot for her, his little princess, and had set up a trust fund for her that would mature when she turned 30. I had received one too, but had already used most of mine to pay for Mum's medical bills when her insurance wouldn't cover a procedure 2 years ago. "Sure," I texted back. "The usual place at 12:30. "Perfect, thanks, Em." The morning dragged by in a blur of paperwork and client calls. By noon, I was ready for a break and headed to Gino's, the little Italian place halfway between my office and Lily's boutique where she worked part-time. I got there first and claimed our usual corner table. When Lily walked in, I immediately knew something was wrong. Her normally perfectly styled blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup, something I rarely saw. Her eyes were puffy, like she'd been crying. "Hey," she said, sliding into the booth. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course." "What's going on? You look terrible." She gave a weak laugh. "Thanks a lot." "You know what I mean. Are you okay?" Lily fidgeted with the napkin, tearing off little pieces. "I don't know how to tell you this, Em." My mind immediately went to the worst places. "Are you sick? Is it Mum? Did something happen?" "No." "Nothing like that." She took a deep breath. "I found something about Dad's will, and Mom, and you." The waiter came by, but I waved him off. "What are you talking about?" "Last week I was helping Mum organise some old papers in Dad's office, and I found a folder hidden in the back of his filing cabinet. It had a copy of his will, a different one than the one we were shown after he died." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean, different?" The date on it was more recent than the one the lawyer had, and it had different terms. "What kind of different terms?" Lily reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document, sliding it across the table. "See for yourself." I opened the papers, my hands suddenly cold despite the warm restaurant. It was indeed a copy of Dad's will, dated just 3 weeks before his death, nearly 2 months more recent than the will that had been executed. I scanned the pages, and my breath caught as I reached the section about distribution of assets. In this version, Dad had left the house outright to me, not to Mom with a life estate as the executed will had stated. There was also a specific bequest, a separate investment account worth $457,000 that I knew nothing about, split evenly between Lily and me. Neither of these provisions had been in the will that was presented after Dad's death. "This doesn't make any sense," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why would there be 2 different wills?" Lily leaned forward. "I confronted Mum about it yesterday. She got really angry. Said I was snooping where I shouldn't be. But Em, I think she and her lawyer friend Mr. Harrington hid this will and used the older one. That's a serious accusation." "Lily, that would be fraud. Criminal fraud." "I know, and there's more." She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen a few times before handing it to me. "I recorded our conversation. I know it was wrong, but I had a feeling." I pressed play. and Mum's voice filled my ears, tinny through the phone speaker. "You don't understand what you're talking about, Lily. Your father was confused in his final months. He made changes without understanding the implications. Harold and I were protecting all of us." "By hiding his real will? That's illegal, Mom." "Don't you dare judge me. Do you have any idea what it's like to face being a widow with nothing? Your father was giving everything to Emma. The house, the extra money, everything. What was I supposed to do? Where was I supposed to live? Emma already controls enough of this family." I stopped the recording, my hands shaking. She hid Dad's real will? Because he left me the house?" Lily nodded, tears in her eyes. "There's more on the recording. She admitted that the investment account did exist, but she and Mr. Harrington transferred the funds before presenting the old will. She's been using that money, Em. Our money." My mind raced, trying to process this betrayal. All those nights I'd stayed with Mum after Dad died, helping her through her grief. All the times I'd paid her bills when she claimed to be short that month. The $62,000 from my own trust fund that I'd given her for that specialized treatment. "She used me," I whispered. "All this time." "There's one more thing," Lily said, her voice breaking. "The reason I think Dad changed his will. I found letters, Em, between Mum and Mr. Harrington. They've been having an affair since before Dad got sick." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Mum and Harold Harrington, Dad's friend and lawyer for over 20 years, the man who had consoled us at the funeral and handled all the estate matters. "That's why she got so angry when I found the will," Lily continued. "I think they've been planning this together from the beginning. Maybe even before Dad died." I couldn't speak. The betrayal was too immense, too all-encompassing. Every memory of the past 3 years suddenly shifted, revealing a different reality behind what I'd believed. "What do we do now?" Lily asked, her voice small. I straightened the papers, folding them carefully. My paralegal training kicked in, the part of my brain that could still function analytically while the rest was in shock. "We need proof of the account, bank statements, transfer records, and we need to find out if this will was ever officially signed and witnessed." "So we're going to fight her?" I looked at my sister, seeing for the first time not the irresponsible girl I'd always resented, but a woman who had uncovered the truth and had the courage to bring it to me. "Yes, Lily, we're going to fight, and we're going to win." That lunch changed everything. As I walked back to my office, clutching the folder with Dad's true will, I felt something hardening inside me. The dutiful daughter who had sacrificed everything for her family was gone. In her place was a woman who had been betrayed and was now determined to get justice. I didn't know then just how ugly things would get, or how far Mum would go to protect her secrets. I didn't know about the other lies that would be uncovered, or the allies we would find in unexpected places. All I knew was that the truth about my sister and me, the truth my mother didn't want me to know, was just the beginning. The first thing I did after lunch with Lily was call in sick for the rest of the day. My boss, Mr. Donovan, must have heard something in my voice, because he didn't even question it. Just told me to take care of myself, and that they'd manage without me. I couldn't go home. Not to the apartment I'd been renting since I gave up my own place to help Mum with the mortgage after Dad died. I needed space to think, to plan. I drove to Castle Island Park and sat on a bench overlooking Boston Harbor, the folder with Dad's will clutched in my hands. As a paralegal, I knew enough about estate law to understand what had happened. Mum and Harold Harrington had committed fraud. They had suppressed Dad's valid, more recent will and presented an outdated one to the probate court. They had diverted funds that rightfully belonged to Lily and me. If I could prove it, they would face not just civil penalties but potential criminal charges. But this wasn't just about the money, although the thought of the $457,000 account, over $228,000 that should have been mine, made my blood boil. This was about Dad's final wishes. This was about the betrayal of everything I thought my family stood for. I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew I could trust, Marcus Jennings, a lawyer I'd worked with at Donovan and Associates, who had left to start his own practice 6 months ago. "Emma, everything okay?" His deep voice answered after 2 rings. "No, Marcus, everything is not okay. I need your help." Professionally, it's about my father's estate. There was a pause. This sounds serious. Can you come to my office tomorrow, say 9 a.m? I'll be there. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my one-bedroom apartment, replaying years of interactions with my mother. Had she always been this person, capable of such calculated betrayal? Or had grief and fear changed her? I thought about all the times she'd made me feel guilty for not doing enough, all while she was sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars that should have been partially mine. I thought about Dad too. Had he suspected Mum's affair with Harold? Is that why he changed his will, to protect Lily and me? The questions kept circling in my mind until dawn light filtered through my blinds. At 8:45 the next morning, I was sitting in the waiting area of Marcus's modest office in a converted brownstone in Back Bay. His receptionist, an older woman named Gloria, brought me a cup of strong coffee and squeezed my shoulder sympathetically. I must have looked as terrible as I felt. "Emma," Marcus greeted me, emerging from his office. "Come in." Marcus was in his early 40s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd always been fair to work with, respectful of the paralegals in a way many lawyers weren't. Once I was seated across from his desk, he folded his hands. "Tell me what's going on." I placed Dad's will on the desk between us and told him everything. Lily's discovery, the recording, the investment account, the affair. He listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes. When I finished, he sat back. "This is extremely serious, Emma. If what you're alleging is true, your mother and Mr. Harrington have committed several crimes, including fraud upon the probate court and conversion of assets." "It's true, I know it is. The question is, can we prove it? We'll need more than just the copy of the will and a potentially illegally obtained recording. We need to establish that this will was properly executed, signed and witnessed according to Massachusetts law. We need documentation of the investment account and proof of the transfers. And ideally, we need evidence that your mother and Mr. Harrington knowingly suppressed this will. Lily mentioned letters between them. If we could get those..." Marcus shook his head. "I have to caution you against anything that could be construed as theft or unauthorized access. Let's do this by the book. I'll prepare a petition to the probate court to investigate the potential fraud and reopen your father's estate. In the meantime, I'll send a preservation letter to both your mother and Mr. Harrington, putting them on notice not to destroy any potentially relevant documents." "How much is this going to cost?" I asked, suddenly remembering my dwindling savings. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. "Consider this pro bono, at least for now. If we recover assets, we can discuss a percentage then." "Why would you do that?" He smiled slightly. "Let's just say I've seen too many families torn apart by greed after a death, and you've always been one of the hardest working, most honest people at Donovan. You deserve better than this." I felt tears threatening for the first time since Lily's revelation. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly, Emma. Are you prepared for that? For potentially sending your mother to jail?" The question hit me hard. Despite everything, this was still my mother. The woman who had bandaged my scraped knees as a child, who had sat by my hospital bed for 3 days straight when I had appendicitis at 14. But she was also the woman who had stolen from me, who had been having an affair while my father was dying, who had lied to my face for 3 years while watching me struggle financially. "I'm prepared to get justice for my father," I said finally. "Whatever that takes." Marcus nodded. "Then let's get started." Over the next week, Lily and I began gathering evidence while trying to act normal around Mom. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, smiling through Sunday dinner, pretending I didn't know about her betrayal. But we needed time for Marcus to prepare our legal strategy. Lily managed to get photographs of some of the letters between Mom and Harold, careful to return them exactly as she'd found them. They were damning, discussions of their relationship dating back to when Dad was first diagnosed with cancer, mentions of the financial situation, and how they would handle things after he was gone. I used my connections at work to discreetly research the investment account mentioned in the will. It had existed, all right, with Baxter Financial Group, a firm Dad had occasionally mentioned. The account had been liquidated 3 weeks after his death, with the funds transferred to an offshore account. I couldn't trace them further without a court order. 9 days after my meeting with Marcus, I received a call from him while I was at work. "Emma, I've filed the petition. The sheriff will be serving your mother and Mr. Harrington this afternoon. I wanted you to be prepared." My heart raced. Should I be there when Mum gets served? "That's up to you, but once this happens, there's no going back. She'll know you're behind it." I thought about it. "No, I don't want to be there, but I'll go see her tonight. I want to see her face when she tries to lie to me again." That evening, I drove to the house I'd grown up in, the house that should have been mine according to Dad's true will. It was a lovely colonial in Newton, with a wraparound porch where I'd spent countless summer evenings reading. Mum's car was in the driveway, alongside a silver Mercedes I recognised as Harold's. Good, let them both be there. I used my key to enter, calling out as I always did. "Mum, it's me." I found them in the living room, papers spread across the coffee table between them. Harold looked up first, his face draining of colour when he saw me. Mum's expression shifted from surprise to something harder to read, fear, maybe, or calculation. "Emma," she said, quickly gathering the papers. "We weren't expecting you." "Clearly." I remained standing in the doorway, not trusting myself to move closer. "Did you have an interesting afternoon?" Harold stood, straightening his tie nervously. "Margaret, perhaps I should go." "Sit down, Harold," I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "This concerns you, too." Mum's eyes narrowed. "What's going on, Emma? What have you done?" "What have I done? That's rich, coming from you." I stepped into the room, "I know everything, Mom. About Dad's real will. About the money you stole from Lily and me. About your affair with Harold that started before Dad was even gone." Her face hardened, all pretense falling away. "Lily? I should have known she couldn't keep her mouth shut." "Don't you dare blame her. She did exactly what she should have done, told me the truth. Something you've been incapable of for years." Harold stood again, despite my earlier command. "Emma, you need to understand the complicated nature of these matters. Your father wasn't thinking clearly in his final months." "Save it for court, Harold. I've seen the letters between you two, planning your future together while my father was dying in the next room." "You make me sick." Mum stood now too, her face flushed with anger. "You ungrateful girl. After everything I've done for you. Everything you've done for me." I laughed, a harsh sound that didn't seem like it could come from me. "You've used me, manipulated me, stolen from me. You watched me drain my savings to help with your bills when you were sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars of my money. It wasn't just your money. I needed security. What was I supposed to do when your father decided to change everything at the last minute? Leave me with nothing while you got the house and all that money? You were supposed to respect his wishes. You were supposed to be honest with your daughters. You were supposed to act like a mother. Not a thief." Harold stepped between us. "That's enough. Emma, I think you should leave. We can discuss this through proper legal channels." I looked him straight in the eye. "You're right about one thing, Harold. We will be discussing this through proper legal channels. The sheriff served you both with papers today. The probate court will be reopening Dad's estate and investigating the fraud you committed. I hope you've both saved some of that money you stole, because you're going to need good criminal defense attorneys." Mum sank back onto the couch, her face ashen. "You would do this to your own mother? Send me to jail?" For a moment, I faltered. This angry, defensive woman was still the person who had raised me, who had once been the centre of my world. But then I remembered Dad, who had worked his whole life to provide for us, who had trusted his wife and his friend to honour his final wishes, who had wanted to protect his daughters. "You did this to yourself," I said quietly. "And to Dad. I'm just making it right." I turned to leave, but Mum's voice stopped me. "If you do this, you're no longer my daughter. Do you understand that? You will lose me forever." I looked back at her, this stranger wearing my mother's face. "I already have." As I walked out of the house, I felt a curious lightness. The hardest confrontation was over. Now it was in the hands of the legal system. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel responsible for taking care of my mother. That burden had lifted, replaced by a steely determination to see justice done. Lily was waiting in her car around the corner. I slid into the passenger seat, exhaling a shaky breath. "How did it go?" she asked. "About as well as could be expected. She threatened to disown me." Lily reached over and squeezed my hand. "You know what? Maybe that's not the worst thing in the world." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw strength I'd never given her credit for. "No, maybe it's not. Where to now?" "My place. I ordered pizza, and I have wine, lots of wine." I smiled despite everything. "Lead the way." That night, Lily and I talked more honestly than we ever had before. About Dad, about growing up with Mum's manipulations, about the wedge she'd driven between us over the years. By the time I fell asleep on Lily's couch, I felt like I'd gained a sister even as I'd lost a mother. The legal battle was just beginning, but something else had already shifted. I was no longer the dutiful daughter carrying everyone else's burdens. I was fighting for myself now, and I wasn't alone. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, evidence gathering, and emotional upheaval. Marcus proved to be not just a skilled attorney, but a steadfast ally, guiding Lily and me through the complex process of challenging the probate of Dad's estate. Our first victory came when Judge Eleanor Simmons granted our petition to investigate the potential fraud and temporarily froze Mum's assets, including the house. I'll never forget the look on Mum's face when the judge announced her decision, a mixture of shock and betrayal, as if she were the victim in all this. Harold had arranged for a prestigious law firm to represent them both, with a senior partner named Richard Thornton taking the lead. He was smooth, confident, and clearly used to intimidating people in court. But he hadn't counted on Marcus's meticulous preparation or my insider knowledge of how estate cases worked. "Your Honour," Thornton argued during one hearing, "this is nothing more than a family disagreement blown out of proportion by Ms. Carter's resentment toward her mother. The will that was probated was legally executed and witnessed according to Massachusetts law. The alleged new will is merely a draft that Robert Carter never finalised." Marcus calmly approached the bench. "Your Honour, we have affidavits from 2 witnesses, Mr. Carter's nurse, Janet Phillips, and his neighbour, Thomas Wu, stating that they witnessed him sign this will on March 3rd, just 3 weeks before his death. They have both identified their signatures on the document. This was no draft. It was a properly executed will that was deliberately suppressed." The judge peered at Harold over her reading glasses. "Mr. Harrington, as the attorney who handled the original probate, did you have knowledge of this March 3rd will?" Harold's face remained impassive, but I saw a slight twitch in his jaw. "Your Honour, I was aware that Robert had discussed making changes, but he never presented me with a finalised document. Had he done so, I would of course have submitted it to the court. It was the first direct lie he'd told under oath, and it gave me a grim satisfaction. We had him, because among the evidence Lily had gathered was an email from Harold to Mom, dated March 5th. "I'll sign new papers today. Don't worry. We'll handle it. Trust me." Marcus introduced that email at the next hearing, along with bank records we'd obtained through subpoena showing the existence of the investment account and its liquidation shortly after Dad's death. The transfer had been authorised by both Mum and Harold, using a power of attorney that had technically terminated upon Dad's death. Throughout it all, Mum refused to speak to me outside of court. She'd enlisted family friends and even my Aunt Susan, her sister, to try to pressure me into dropping the case. "This is tearing the family apart," Aunt Susan said when she ambushed me outside my apartment one evening. "Your mother is devastated. Emma. She's lost her husband, and now her daughter is trying to send her to jail. What would your father think?" "Dad would want his wishes respected," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "And he'd want his daughters to receive what he intended for them. It's just money, Emma. Is it really worth all this?" "It's not just about the money, Susan. It's about the lies, the betrayal. Mum and Harold had an affair while Dad was dying. They conspired to hide his will and steal from his daughters. If you're okay with that, then I don't know what to say to you." She'd left, shaken but still defending her sister. I wasn't surprised. Family loyalty ran deep. But it should be built on truth, not lies. The case took an unexpected turn when Marcus received an anonymous envelope containing printouts of text messages between Mom and Harold dating back 4 years, to well before Dad's cancer diagnosis. They discussed not just their affair, but their financial plans for the future, with Harold repeatedly assuring Mom that he would take care of everything once Dad was gone. "Do you have any idea who sent these?" I asked Marcus as we reviewed the messages in his office. He shook his head. The envelope had no return address, but given the content, it had to be someone with access to either your mother's or Harold's personal communications. My mind raced. Harold's wife? Could she have found out about the affair? Possibly. Or it could be someone at Harold's firm. Regardless, these messages corroborate our timeline and establish clear intent to defraud. I'm going to present them to the DA's office. That's when things escalated from a civil dispute to a potential criminal case. The district attorney assigned a prosecutor named Sarah Chen to review our evidence. 2 days later, she called Marcus. "They want to meet with us," he told me after hanging up. "The DA's office believes there's enough evidence to pursue criminal charges for fraud, conversion and conspiracy. They're offering your mother a deal if she'll testify against Harold." I felt a sudden hollowness in my chest. Criminal charges. That means jail time, doesn't it? Marcus nodded slowly. Potentially, yes. Especially for Harold, as an attorney who violated his ethical duties. For your mother, with no prior record, it might be probation or home confinement, but that depends on her cooperation. What kind of deal are they offering? She'd have to return all the misappropriated funds, pay a fine, and serve probation instead of jail time. In exchange, she'd provide full testimony about Harold's role in suppressing the will and transferring the funds. I sat back, suddenly overwhelmed. All I had wanted was to reclaim what Dad had intended for Lily and me, to expose the truth about what Mom and Harold had done. But the reality of my mother as a criminal defendant, making deals with prosecutors, facing public disgrace, hit me hard. "Can I think about it?" I asked. Marcus looked surprised. "Emma, this isn't really your decision to make. The DA's office will proceed with or without your blessing at this point. The evidence of criminal activity is too strong to ignore." "I know, but she's still my mother, despite everything." He reached across the desk and briefly touched my hand. "Take the night to process this. We're meeting with Ms. Chen tomorrow at 2 p.m. You and Lily should both be there." That night, I couldn't sleep. Again. I found myself looking through old family photos, searching for clues I might have missed. Was Mom already involved with Harold in this picture from Dad's 60th birthday? Where they stood on opposite sides of the room but seemed to be sharing a glance. Had Dad suspected something in those final months as he changed his will? Around midnight, my doorbell rang. I approached cautiously, looking through the peephole. To my shock, it was Mom. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. "What are you doing here?" She looked smaller somehow, her shoulders hunched, her face pale and drawn. "Can I come in, Emma? Please?" Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She entered, glancing around my small apartment as if seeing it for the first time. "You've made it nice," she said. "Cozy. I doubt you came here at midnight to comment on my decorating skills." She sank onto my couch, suddenly looking every one of her 62 years. "I heard from Richard today, about the DA's offer. Of course, that's why she was here, not to apologise or make amends, but because she was facing criminal charges." "And?" I remained standing, unwilling to sit beside her. "Harold wants me to refuse, to stand with him against these baseless accusations, as he puts it." She laughed bitterly. "Even now he's thinking only of himself." "Is that so different from what you did, thinking only of yourself?" She flinched. "I deserved that, I suppose." She was quiet for a moment, then looked up at me. "I'm going to take the deal, Emma. I'm going to tell them everything." I hadn't expected that. "Why? Why now?" "Because I'm tired. Tired of the lies. Tired of running from what I did." She twisted her hands in her lap. "And because I realise I've already lost what matters most, my daughter's trust. Your father would be so ashamed of me. Yes, he would. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't expect your forgiveness, Emma. What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed not just you and Lily, but Robert too, a man who loved me faithfully for 35 years. Why did you do it? Was Dad's life insurance and pension not enough? Was the house not enough? She shook her head. It wasn't about need, not really. It was about fear, I think. Fear of being alone, of being dependent on my children. Harold made me feel secure, wanted. He promised me a future where I wouldn't have to worry. And I chose to believe him, even when it meant betraying everything I should have held sacred. I felt my anger softening, just slightly. Not forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The money, though, I pressed. Over $450,000 that Dad wanted Lily and me to have. Where is it? Mum looked away. Some of it is gone. Harold convinced me to invest in a business venture that failed, about $150,000. Another $75,000 went to renovations on the house. And the rest. In an account in the Cayman Islands. Harold set it up, said it would be safer there. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. Here's the account information, the passwords, everything you need to access it. There should be about $232,000 left. I took the paper, my hand trembling slightly. You're just giving it to me. Just like that. It was always yours and Lily's. I was wrong to take it. She stood, gathering her purse. I'll tell the prosecutor everything tomorrow, about the will, the money, the affair, all of it. Harold will probably face disbarment at the very least. As she moved toward the door, I found myself asking, what will you do? After? She paused, her hand on the doorknob. I don't know. Sell the house. Obviously, it should have been yours all along. Find somewhere smaller. Try to rebuild some kind of relationship with my daughters if they'll let me. She looked back at me. Do you think that might be possible someday? I couldn't lie to her. I don't know, Mum. That trust is shattered. It would take a lot of time, a lot of truth, to even begin to repair it. She nodded, a sad smile on her lips. Time and truth. Well, I have plenty of the former ahead of me, and I'm finally ready for the latter. She opened the door. Good night, Emma. Good night, I replied, surprised to find my voice catching. After she left, I sat on the couch, holding the paper with the account information. It wasn't a victory, exactly. There was too much loss involved for that. But it felt like the first step toward resolution. I called Lily, despite the late hour. Mum just came to see me, I told her when she answered groggily. What? Why? She's taking the deal, turning on Harold, and she gave me the information to access the remaining money. Holy shit. Lily was fully awake now. Are you serious? Just like that? Just like that. Do you believe her? That she's really sorry? I thought about it. I think she's sorry she got caught. But I also think she's starting to understand what she's done, the damage she's caused. It's a start. What happens now? We meet with the prosecutor tomorrow. After that, I guess we see where the legal process takes us. And with Mum, what happens with her? That was the harder question. I don't know. Lil, I can't imagine things ever being the way they were, but maybe eventually we find a new normal. Something built on honesty this time. After we hung up, I sat by my window, watching the lights of Boston in the distance. I thought about Dad, wondering if he was watching over us, if he knew the truth was finally coming out. I hoped so. I hoped he could see that his daughters had fought for what was right, that we'd become closer through this ordeal rather than letting it tear us apart. The path ahead was still uncertain, filled with court dates and difficult conversations, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could see beyond the betrayal to something resembling peace. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps someday understanding. The meeting with Prosecutor Sarah Chen the next day was grueling but productive. Mum arrived with her new attorney, She'd dismissed Richard Thornton and hired a more modest lawyer named Patricia Diaz, who specialised in negotiating plea agreements. Harold was conspicuously absent, having apparently realised that Mum was going to cooperate with the authorities. Mum kept her word, answering all of Ms. Chen's questions thoroughly and honestly. She admitted to knowing about Dad's updated will, to conspiring with Harold to hide it, and to transferring the investment funds. She provided dates, details, and evidence that corroborated everything Lily and I had discovered and more. Harold told me Robert wasn't thinking clearly when he made the changes, Mum explained, her voice steady despite the shame evident on her face. He said we could justify using the earlier will as Robert's true intent. I knew it was wrong, but I convinced myself it was necessary. Ms. Chen, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, took meticulous notes. And the investment account. Whose idea was it to transfer those funds? Harold's. He said if we left it in place, the girls might eventually discover it through the account statements. He set up the offshore account and handled the transfer. I just signed where he told me to. But you knew the money was intended for your daughters? Mum glanced at Lily and me, sitting side by side across the conference table. Yes. I knew. By the end of the 3-hour meeting, Ms. Chen had enough to formalise the plea agreement and to prepare charges against Harold. Mum would plead guilty to fraud and conversion, return all recoverable funds, pay a fine of $50,000, and serve 3 years of probation with 1,000 hours of community service. In exchange, she would avoid jail time and provide testimony against Harold if his case went to trial. As we were leaving the prosecutor's office, Mum approached Lily and me hesitantly. I know you probably don't want to talk to me right now, she said, but I wanted to tell you both that I'm listing the house for sale next week. Whatever it sells for beyond the mortgage balance is yours, split equally. It should have been Emma's all along, but I want both of you to benefit. Lily looked at me, silently deferring to my lead on how to respond. That's fair, I said finally. Thank you. Mum nodded, seemingly relieved that I'd spoken to her at all. I've found a small condo to rent in Watertown. I'll be moving out this weekend if either of you wanted to take any of your childhood things from the house before I pack everything up. It was an olive branch. A small one. An invitation to step back into her life, even if just to reclaim pieces of our past. Maybe, I said. I'll think about it. She didn't push for more, just nodded again and walked away with Patricia, her shoulders straight despite everything. Lily linked her arm through mine as we watched Mum leave. Are you okay? Surprisingly, yes. It feels like closure in a way. Not complete, but beginning. Do you want to go to the house this weekend? I could use moral support to face all my embarrassing teenage posters. I smiled slightly. Sure, we'll make a day of it, excavating the past together. Marcus joined us as we left the building. That went as well as could be expected. Ms. Chen has more than enough to pursue a solid case against Harold now. What happens to him? Lily asked. If he's convicted? Given the severity of the breaches of fiduciary duty and his position as an attorney, he's looking at potential disbarment and probably 2 to 5 years in prison. His firm is already distancing themselves. They issued a statement this morning saying he's taken a leave of absence pending resolution of personal matters. I felt a twinge of satisfaction at that. Harold had used his professional status and knowledge of the law to help Mum steal from us. It was fitting that he would lose that status as a consequence. What about us? I asked. The money, the house. How do we get all that straightened out legally? I've prepared a petition to have your father's true will admitted to probate. With your mother's testimony and the evidence we've gathered, it should be granted. Once that happens, the house will legally transfer to you. Emma, and the court will order an accounting of the investment funds. Whatever your mother returns voluntarily will be credited against what she owes. And if she doesn't have all of it? Marcus's expression turned serious. Then she'll be in debt to the estate until she pays it back. But given her cooperation so far, I'm hopeful she'll continue to do the right thing. That Saturday, Lily and I met at the house we'd grown up in. Mum had left a note saying she was staying with Aunt Susan for the day to give us privacy. The house felt different somehow, less like the warm family home of my childhood, and more like a stage set where an elaborate deception had been performed. We started in the attic, sorting through boxes of school projects, report cards, and forgotten toys. It was strange how objects could hold so many memories, some painful, some sweet. "Look at this," Lily said, pulling out a framed family portrait from when I was about 12 and she was 6. "We look so happy." Maybe we were. "Then," I replied, taking the photo. Dad stood tall in the centre, one arm around Mom, the other hand on my shoulder. Lily sat cross-legged in front, grinning with her 2 front teeth missing. "I think Dad was happy, at least." "Do you think Mom loved him? Really loved him, I mean?" I considered the question, thinking about the 35 years my parents had been married before Dad's death. I think she did, in her way, but I don't think she knew how to be alone. When Dad got sick, she got scared, and fear makes people do terrible things sometimes. Lily nodded, carefully wrapping the portrait in a t-shirt and placing it in her box of things to keep. "I'm taking this, not for Mum's sake, but for Dad's, and ours. We were a family once." We worked our way through the house, the upstairs bedrooms, the hall closets, the basement storage. By late afternoon, we each had several boxes of salvaged memories. As we were finishing in Dad's office, the room where Lily had found the hidden will, I noticed a leather-bound book on the bottom shelf of his bookcase. I recognised it immediately as the journal he'd kept for years. I pulled it out, my heart racing. "Lily, look. Dad's journal." She came to stand beside me. "Do you think we should read it?" I ran my hand over the worn cover. "I think he might have left it for us to find." We sat together on Dad's old leather couch, the journal between us. The final entries were dated just weeks before his death. With shaking hands, I turned to those pages. "March 2nd, I read aloud. "Meeting with Harold tomorrow to sign the new will. I don't like doing this behind Margaret's back, but I no longer trust her to protect the girl's interests. The evidence Janet brought me yesterday confirms my suspicions about her relationship with Harold. 35 years of marriage, and it comes to this. But I won't let her take from Emma and Lily what I've worked my whole life to provide for them. Emma especially has sacrificed so much to help care for me during this illness. The house should go to her, she's earned it, and both girls deserve their share of the Baxter investment. I've instructed Janet and Tom to witness the signing. I hope Margaret never discovers what I know, but if she does, well, I'll be beyond her anger by then." Tears streamed down my face as I read Dad's words. He had known. He had changed his will not out of confusion or spite, but to protect us. And in his final days, he'd been carrying not just the burden of his illness, but the knowledge of Mum's betrayal. Lily wiped her own tears. He knew, and he still didn't expose them. He tried to shield us from it. Right to the end. "That was Dad," I said softly, always protecting everyone else. We spent another hour reading earlier entries, learning about Dad's gradual suspicions, his confrontation with evidence of the affair, his decision to change his will. It was painful, but somehow healing to see the events through his eyes, to understand his motives. As we were leaving, boxes loaded in our cars, Mum's silver sedan pulled into the driveway. She got out, looking uncertain about approaching her own home while we were there. "We're just finishing up," I said, neither warm nor cold. She nodded. "Did you find everything you wanted to keep?" "Yes. Including Dad's journal." Her face paled. "His journal, I didn't know he kept one." "He did. Right up until the end." I met her eyes directly. "He knew, Mum. About you and Harold. That's why he changed his will." She seemed to sag against her car. "Oh God, Robert knew!" Tears filled her eyes. All this time, I thought I'd protected him from that pain at least. He protected you, even knowing the truth. He never confronted you. He just quietly took steps to make sure Lily and I would be provided for. Mom covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. For the first time, I felt her remorse might be genuine, not just regret at being caught, but true sorrow for having betrayed a man who had loved her enough to shield her from public shame even in his final days. Impulsively, I stepped forward and touched her arm. Not an embrace, but contact. The house is on the market. She lowered her hands, visibly trying to compose herself. Yes. The realtor thinks it will sell quickly. It's a good neighbourhood and I've kept it in good condition. Good. Let us know when you have an offer. I turned to go, then paused. Mum? Yes? Dad wouldn't have wanted us to hate each other forever. I'm not saying I forgive you yet. But maybe someday, if you continue to make things right. A tentative hope flickered in her eyes. I'd like that, Emma. More than anything. As Lily and I drove away, each to our separate apartments with our boxes of memories, I felt a curious sense of peace settling over me. The betrayal still hurt. The trust was still broken, but now there was truth. And with truth, the possibility of healing, not a return to what was, but perhaps the creation of something new, something honest. That evening, alone in my apartment, I opened Dad's journal again and found an entry from shortly after his diagnosis, when the cancer was still thought to be treatable. The hardest part isn't facing my own mortality, he'd written. It's the thought of leaving my girls, Margaret, Emma, Lily. I've tried to teach them strength, honesty, the courage to stand up for what's right. I hope I've succeeded, because in the end, that's all that matters, not the money or the house or any material thing. Just the knowledge that I've raised daughters who know their worth and will fight for it when necessary. Emma especially reminds me of myself, too responsible sometimes, carrying everyone else's burdens. I hope someday she learns to fight for herself as fiercely as she fights for everyone else. I closed the journal, tears blurring my vision. I'm learning, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. I'm learning. The legal proceedings continued over the next several months, unfolding much as Marcus had predicted. Mum kept her word, cooperating fully with the authorities and making restitution as best she could. The house sold for $875,000, with about $320,000 remaining after paying off the mortgage. True to her word, Mum split this amount equally between Lily and me. The offshore account yielded $232,419.27, just as Mum had said. Combined with the house proceeds, Lily and I each received about $276,000, not the full amount we were entitled to according to Dad's will, but substantial nonetheless. The court ordered Mum to pay the remaining amount in monthly instalments over the next 5 years. Harold didn't fare as well. When he realised Mum had turned on him, he initially tried to fight the charges, claiming she was lying to save herself. But the evidence was overwhelming. The emails, text messages, bank records, and Mum's testimony painted a damning picture of an attorney who had abused his position and betrayed his fiduciary duties to his client. In the end, he accepted a plea deal of his own, though less favourable than Mum's. He would serve 18 months in a minimum security prison, pay significant fines, and face disbarment proceedings. His wife filed for divorce, and his former law partners publicly distanced themselves from him. I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected at seeing him face consequences. Instead, I felt a kind of pity for a man who had thrown away a distinguished career and reputation for an affair and some stolen money. In late October, about 7 months after Lily had first discovered Dad's true will, I received a letter from Mum. She'd been keeping her distance, respecting my need for space while occasionally sending brief updates about her life. This letter was different, more personal. Dear Emma, she wrote, I've been doing a lot of thinking during my community service hours at the senior centre. Many of the people I help are widows and widowers, and I've heard their stories of grief, loneliness and fear. It's helped me understand, though not excuse, my own actions after your father died. Fear is a powerful thing. It can make us unrecognisable, even to ourselves. I was terrified of being alone, of being dependent, of losing the security Robert had always provided. But in trying to protect myself, I betrayed everything he stood for and hurt the 2 people he loved most in the world. I know sorry isn't enough. Words can't undo what I've done, but I want you to know that I'm working every day to become someone worthy of being your mother again. The money, the house, None of it matters compared to what I've lost in your trust and love. Janet Phillips, your father's nurse who witnessed his will, has become a friend through my volunteer work. She told me how kind Robert was to her, how he never complained despite his pain. She also told me that in his final weeks, he spoke constantly of you and Lily, how proud he was of you both. I wish I had listened more to him then, instead of being so caught up in my own fears. I don't expect forgiveness, Emma, but I hope that someday we might find a way to be in each other's lives again. I miss you. I miss Lily. I miss being a family, even though I'm the one who destroyed it. With love, despite everything, Mum. I read the letter several times, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to maintain the distance, to protect myself from being hurt again. But another part, perhaps the part most like Dad, wanted to believe in the possibility of redemption, of relationships healed, if not fully restored. I called Lily to discuss it. I got a letter from Mum too, she said. Similar to yours, it sounds like. What do you think? Is she being sincere? I think so, I said slowly. It's been consistent at least. She's done everything she promised legally, and she hasn't pushed us for more than we're ready to give. Janet told me Mum has been asking about how to make amends, Lily added, not just to us but to Dad's memory somehow. She's been talking about setting up a small scholarship in his name at the community college where he taught night classes. That surprised me. It was the kind of thoughtful gesture the Mum I'd grown up with might have made, before fear and greed had twisted her into someone unrecognisable. I'm having dinner with Janet next week, Lily continued. She suggested maybe Mum could join us. Very casual, very public. No pressure. What do you think? My immediate instinct was to say no, that it was too soon. But then I thought about Dad's journal entry, about his hope that we would know our worth and fight for it. We had done that. We had stood up for ourselves. For the truth. For his wishes. Perhaps now it was time for the next step, not forgetting or pretending the betrayal hadn't happened, but finding a way forward despite it. I think, I said carefully, that I might be ready for that. Not to go back to how things were, but to see if there's a way to build something new. Something based on truth this time. 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a restaurant with Lily, Janet and Mom. It was awkward at first, conversations stilted and careful, but gradually, as the meal progressed, something shifted. We talked about Dad, sharing memories that made us laugh and cry. We talked about the legal case, now nearly resolved, and haltingly, we began to talk about the future. I've been thinking about going back to school, Mum said as we were finishing dessert. To get my counselling certification. Working with the seniors has made me realise I might have something to offer, helping people through grief and transition. That's actually a really good idea, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. You've certainly had experience with both. She looked at me, a tentative smile forming. I have. Not all of it handled well, obviously, but maybe that's valuable too, knowing what not to do. For the first time in months, I laughed with my mother. Not a full reconciliation, but a start. As winter turned to spring, our relationship slowly began to rebuild. Not the same as before. I would never again be the dutiful daughter blindly trusting in my mother's goodness, and she would never be the perfect parent I'd once believed her to be. We were more cautious with each other, more honest, perhaps more real. Lily thrived during this period, gaining confidence as she stepped out of my shadow. She left her part-time job at the boutique and used her portion of the inheritance to open her own small clothing store, something she'd always dreamed of but never thought possible. Watching her transformation from my irresponsible little sister to a successful business owner was one of the unexpected joys that emerged from all the pain. As for me, I made changes too. With my share of the money, I bought a small townhouse in Cambridge and left Donovan and Associates to join Marcus's growing practice as a paralegal with a specialty in estate cases. The work was more fulfilling, helping families navigate the complex legal and emotional terrain of inheritance without falling into the traps that had ensnared my own family. In June, almost exactly a year after Lily had discovered Dad's hidden will, the three of us, Mom, Lily and I, visited Dad's grave together. It was a perfect New England summer day, the cemetery peaceful under a canopy of ancient oaks. Mum placed fresh flowers by the headstone, her hands trembling slightly. "I come here often," she said quietly. "To talk to him, to apologise. I know he can't hear me, but somehow it helps." "I think he would be proud of how far we've come," Lily said, slipping her arm through mine. "All of us." I thought about how much had changed in a year. The betrayal, the confrontation, the legal battle, all painful, all necessary. The truth had cost us our illusions about our family, but it had given us something more valuable, authentic relationships based on honesty rather than manipulation and fear. "We're going to be okay," I said, surprised by how certain I felt. "Not the same, but okay." Mum looked at me, her eyes wet but clear. "That's more than I deserve, but I'll take it, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn back your trust, both of you." As we walked back to our cars, I thought about Dad's journal again, about his hope that I would learn to fight for myself as fiercely as I fought for others. I had learned that lesson, painfully but thoroughly, and in fighting for myself, for the truth, for justice, for what was rightfully mine, I had found a strength I never knew I possessed. The betrayal my mother had tried to hide from me had ultimately led to my own liberation, not just financially, but emotionally, freeing me from the role of the eternally responsible daughter, allowing me to see my family clearly, with all its flaws and complexities. The truth about my sister she didn't want me to know had brought Lily and me closer than we'd ever been, transforming us from rivals for parental approval into allies and friends. And the truth about herself that Mum had tried to deny had forced her to confront her own fears and failures, beginning a journey toward becoming someone better than the woman who had betrayed her husband and daughters. None of us were the same people we'd been a year ago. The painful truth had changed us all. But as we stood together in the gentle June sunshine, I felt Dad's presence somehow, and I knew he would be satisfied with what his daughters had become. Women who knew their worth and had fought for it. Women who had found their way back to family, through truth rather than illusion. It wasn't a perfect ending. Real life rarely offers those, but it was an honest one. And after everything, that seemed like enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.